everybody. This morning I am working with my Country Cottage Sam's Bead Box from November 2025. I've already done one video. I can link that in the description box. This was a collaboration with Danielle Wicks, and it's just lovely. And I started to make like 2 pairs of earrings, and I've designed 5, and I started to do just one little bracelet with this gorgeous owl bead, and I had everything set aside. And then I said, oh, but the hearts and the Czech glass fire polish, I love the colors in it. And you know, like the more you make and the more you design and the more you play in the beads, look at the projects that unfolded. So 5 pairs of earrings and 2 bracelets in today's video. They're all really simple. This is the beads do all the work, really. So this is the first pair. It's this gorgeous little dangly teardrop in all of these pretty colors. And this here, there is a few things I've added in. This here is a 2-hole bead from my Adornable Elements 2-hole Beads of the Month Club. I love it when my bead boxes collide each month. The color, this chalk green, was just absolutely perfect with the aventurine and the Country Cottage colors. So here is the ingredients for that little earring. Not much. I have these 8.0 gold Czech glass seed beads. I think these are just from the craft store. And I have some large hole rondelles that are in an assortment of metallics. I can link that because it's like a whole assortment. In fact, let me just grab the thing and show you. So you have 2 different golds, a copper, a gunmetal, an antique bronze, and a silver. And so these have the large holes, so they are wonderful for if you like chunkier stringing, if you like Brazilian wax cord or leather. They slide on a lot of things, but they're also great for like snuggling down. I'll show you when we string, but see, it just hides where my wire came up to the top of the 2-hole bead. So they work great for that. So I have here a little piece of 28 gauge wire in gold, and I have strung one of the Czech glass fire polish, an 8.0 gold seed bead on each end, and then 12 seed beads from the seed bead mix that was in the box, the Country Cottage mix. These are just gorgeous. These were Miyuki 11.0 seed beads, and I just love them. So that was the little pattern that forms the teardrop. And then I'm going to take one end of my fine gauge wire and put it through one side of my 2-hole bead, and obviously the other end through the other. The wire wants to bounce a little bit, so just get it in there. And I took about about 10 inches of wire, and the reason is I want to have the extra wire to do a twist, and then I make the very fine gauge wire a little bit more substantial for making the loop at the top. So when you pull everything nice and tight, you don't have much of a shape, but this is really, really easy to shape. And so I just try to match my other earring, my loop on my other earring. And I'm going to just take my pliers and draw these 2 wires together at the top of my bead and just give a little twist to start me off. And then I'm going to put my nylon jaw pliers over my wire with gentle pressure, and I'm going to twist, and I'm kind of pulling a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to get wrapped into a loop, and it's going to have a very boho, messy wrap look when I'm done. But this is such an easy way to twist wire there is a tool for wire twisting, which I have, but this is so easy and convenient. And so I'm just going to twist enough so that I have plenty to do a wire wrapped loop. That is way more already than I will need, but I'd rather not run short. So I can go ahead and get rid of some of that. And then I'm just going to stack one of those rondelles. See what it does? It just fits really well. And then the 8.0 seed bead snuggles down into the large hole. So you just get this really cool shape. It's one of the things that I love the most about jewelry making is the cool shapes you get by stacking beads. And then I'm going to put my pliers in here and do a wrapped loop, like a normal wrapped loop with that twisted wire. Looks like that, and you know, because I twisted the wire, this is going to look like a messy wrap, so it's really easy wrapping. I'm just going to hold on to the loop and wrap down to my beads and get it nice and tight. And I'm going to do this, have my pliers handy because I have a little bit more strength with the pliers. And so I'm like pushing everything down because I want this to be nice and tight. And once I get down to my beads, to make this really chunky, I'm going to wrap up again. Reposition this plier. Just going to wrap up toward my loop and just you know, wrap on top of my wraps and just make this really chunky. So you know, it's just a little trick when you're working with super fine gauge wire to make it more substantial when you get to this bit. And I'm going to trim off in what will be the back. The 2-hole beads do have kind of a flat side. It's a cabochon 2-hole bead. And then I can just tweak my loop so that it matches the other side. That's great. And pop this on an ear wire, and the first pair is done, and it is stunning. It's very it's boho, but to me this is like autumn at its finest because of the color story. You just love it. I love the dangle. Those are so sweet. Okay, first pair is done. The second pair is this adorable fox charm earring. And I used one of the bellflowers, one of the faceted gemstones, and a couple of little spacers, and I made my own bead embellished ear wire for this. And there is a little trick to this because I'm using small beads at the top. So I have a little piece of 20 gauge wire and literally 4 beads and a fox. And I am going to start, I use my 1-step looper for most of my earrings. I'm using the 1.5 millimeter. I'm going to put the wire in just past this back cutter because there are no beads on there. Get my simple loop in there and just pull it so that you can straighten if you want, but we're going to bend it again. But just pulled it down so that loop is centered. And so my ear wire loop is in there. And now I'm going to look at it as this is the front of my earring. The opening of this loop is to the back. So you see the earring is seamless when I add in my fox, and I can go ahead and add the fox. You can, you know, like work from the bottom up on this design. You can go ahead and open that loop and add the fox. In fact, that kind of helps you to get your ear wire nice and straight. And then I'm going to do my little stack of beads. So one of the faceted gemstones, and then my bellflower facing down, so the gemstone is coming out of the middle, and then this little copper spacer from my stash, and one of those seed beads, and just feed that down. Now, because I've chosen really small beads for the top of my ear wire, I am going to have to do a really dramatic bend. So I'm looking at the front of my earring and I'm going to bend this drastically toward me. And what that does is keeps these beads on. So now they are in place. I'm going to come in with my 6-step bail making plier, put my ear wire in there so that I am wrapping around the largest barrel, and just so that I don't have any straightening to do on the back end, just like really take a second and make sure that is straight. And then I'm just going to wrap this around to the back. And it is done. And then for trimming this, I used the top of the bellflower as my guide for where to trim my wire. And then I'm going to take my flat nose pliers and line my end of my ear wire up in the flat nose pliers so that width gives me a little kick on my ear wire. And then from here, if you want to pull it out or do anything, but look at that. It's such a gorgeous pair of earrings. Now on all of my earrings where I have created my own ear wires, I use my battery operated reamer with the wire rounder attachment on the end. So if the wire end fits in the little cup and you just press the button and go around for a few seconds, and it's unbelievably smooth and an unbelievably professional finish. If you don't have this fancy tool, I always link all of my favorite tools, things like this, in my description box, but you can also use like a metal nail file to smooth the ends, or a buffing block for like a vintage metal buffing block. But that, if you're a toolaholic like me, that really makes earrings have a nice professional finish, and my little foxes are done. I think those are so whimsical and sweet. So for the third pair, I have a little bit of chain. We have these gorgeous Czech glass buttons in the box, and I just made some baubles and used the button as a connector for this earring. So here are the ingredients for this. Let me just dump everything out. Now for this, I did have to make two for this earring, two for this earring, large jump rings. These are 10mm jump rings, and that is what I needed to comfortably go over the button, top and bottom. So I'll go ahead and open this and feed this on the top of the button and just wiggle it in there so that it comes around like that. And then to that, I am adding 7 links of copper chain from my stash. Another bead box that collided because the copper was in the bargain bead box this month, and I just loved this chain. So I'm gonna pop that little odd number of links. What you need is an odd number of links, and on this chain, on this oval link. And what that does is gives you your connecting links parallel to your mat and perpendicular to your mat. It makes it really easy to get your button facing forward and to add in the charms we're going to create. And also, I just want to baby my closure on my jump rings, because on this design, the jump ring is really kind of a feature. So I want to make sure it doesn't bounce out of there, as wire will do. There we go. So that is the start, and I made my ear wires on this one, and it was the exact same thing that I did there, but without beads, and I've already opened that. So I'll go ahead and attach, and the reason that I am attaching my chain and my ear wire first on this design is because it makes it much, much easier for filling up the chain to see where to connect things. So once you have your chain on there, it's much easier to see what you're doing. And then I just by hand made a whole bunch of little baubles. So I have these really fine gauge ball head pins, and I'm going to pop on one of the faceted gemstones, and I'm going to do the lazy girl way. I'm going to put a little bend with my round nose pliers, put my round nose pliers in, wrap that around. It looks like I'm starting to wire wrap, rotate. I'm going to bring this around, center that loop, and then I'm going to come inside and snip right where the two wires meet. It's such an easy way to get your simple loops in there. Let me do it again. I created just these little bead baubles. Never fails, you guys. Every video I have to pick up something with a blocked hole. I recently had somebody kind of leave me not a nice comment about YouTubers not telling the truth about beads being damaged or, you know, having problems. And, you know, it happens. It just happens. All of these little teeny tiny beads and components are made. And so sometimes I have everything perfect in a box, but I have a knack for picking up a bead with a blocked hole when I'm filming but I keep like this little set of reamers so I don't have to throw that away. Whatever was in the hole, I have cleared it. And I always link that in my description box. But I'm not being disingenuous. You know, I think for the price of these boxes, I almost never have an issue, but it is little tiny beads, and it is going to happen where you have a bead that's cracked or, you know, has a blocked hole or that's broken. I mean, what in this world is perfect? Okay, I'm done venting. So that's just one of my little stacks there. And same thing, I'm just going to give the wire a bend, put my round nose plier in there, and wrap it, rotate it, bring it around, center it, and like from here I could take this away and hold on to that loop and do a wrapped loop. But for simple loops, it's such an easy way to come inside the loop and make that little snip. And so it's open slightly, but I'm going to have to open all of these anyway to add them to my chain. And I worked my way from the bottom up, and I'm also going to copy exactly what I did. So let me do the green one, because that, and I'll show you how simple it is to attach. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open that simple loop a little bit more. And my first attachment is, if you can see, my first link on my chain is going parallel to my mat, which is why I chose 7 links for my chain. It's an odd number. Then my next, I'm going to skip that one because my button and my jump ring are already in that one. So my next link on my earring is going perpendicular to my mat, and that means I can connect on the front side. So over here is the back side of that second link, and I'm going to connect this bauble to the front side. You know, when you're doing a simple connecting project, it is simple, but how you connect and the orientation of your loops really does matter as far as how things hang. So I have my simple loop in there on the front side, and I'm going to get in here and close it and work harden it a little bit. And so when I hold my earring up, that first little bauble is hanging on the front side of my chain, and conversely, you know, also on the front side of my earring. I have a funny little bend in my wire. Fix that. Okay, so for connecting then, let me show you the other earring, because I want to copy, I want everything to hang the same. So the next link on my earring is going parallel to my mat, and on the left side, because with these links in here, there is a left and a right to this link. On the left side, I am connecting this little bauble that I made. So on this earring, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to come to that link right there and get my bauble that I made and open it, and just make sure that I am coming to the left side and putting my simple loop in there, and get in there and close it really well. So it doesn't seem like it's all that important, but those little tips and tricks when you pick up your earring after everything's done are what make it hang beautifully and just like the other earring. So my next little bauble was this rust color one, and again it's on the next link up and connected to the front side of the link in the chain. And so I'm gonna do that all the way up, finish making my little baubles and connect just like that, so both of my earrings match. Okay, my connecting there is all done, and it matches exactly my other earring. It's connected exactly the same way, so they really will dangle the same. So for the final drop, I am going to open this jump ring. It's the same as the first one, and I'm going to put it through that, wiggle it through that bottom buttonhole, and then I'm just going to set it down and let it hang out while I make my final drop. Come on. When you are putting a round form like this through glass, you have to wiggle it a little bit. So I'm just going to let that hang out. And then I took another one of those ball head pins, a Czech glass faceted round, a little copper spacer, and an 8/0 seed bead. And I'm going to wire wrap a loop on this one. So 90-degree bend, put my round nose pliers in there, bring that over the top barrel, rotate, bring that around, and just center everything so that it is perfectly lined up. And if I wanted to do a simple loop here, I could, but I decided to wrap this because it's my final drop, and these ball head pins that I have are really fine. They are perfect, you know, really fine gauge for this kind of work. I'm just going to wrap right down to those beads. And like always, tuck that cut, even though it's small, still tuck that cut end really well. There we go. Look at that sweet little drop. I love it. And then I'm just going to come to my open jump ring and pop that on and close this really, really well like we did the other one. Metal to metal. Look at this. It's so dangly and textural and rich in color. I love this pair of earrings. I really love them. They are just gorgeous. I love the mix of chains, metal, Czech glass, the button. I love the mix of gold and copper. I just think that is just a stunning pair. Okay, the next pair is literally earring poetry. These gorgeous little bird charms were in the box, and these table cut birch branch beads. I just thought it was poetry to have like the birch branch bead underneath the little bird sitting on a branch charm. I just think it's so sweet. And then a final little bauble. And again, on this one, I mixed gold and copper, and I used an ear wire from an assortment of ear wires that I always link in my description box, but you could also make your own. And so I used my one-step looper again to make a simple loop component on the bird branch, and I'm going to do the exact same thing as we did on the last earring. Put my bead on, put a little gold disc, nestle a copper spacer right on top of that, and I am going to wire wrap this loop the same way that I did the last one, again because my ball head pins are really tiny, really fine gauge, and I just want to substantiate that a little bit. So this is just connecting, and the only thing I want to do is make sure that when I connect with my simple loops that opening is going to go on the back of the earring. So I'm going to put my bauble on one simple loop, close it really well, work hard in it, and then I'm going to come to the top simple loop and open that. And I'm really just turning this charm into a connector. Right at the base of the connector, I'm just going to add it, the connector or the charm. It's a connector now because I'm connecting to both sides. And it is done. All I have to do on this one is very gently open this ear wire just like we do a jump ring and pop that birdie onto the ear wire and close it. I love where the gold and copper meet. They're my favorite metals, but they're both very warm metals. And you know, I just feel like they're very rich. Look at that sweet little earring. This pair is so fun and so fast, just a couple of loops, and that pair is done. And then this is my 5th pair, my last pair. I took the pair drop, the aventurine drop, and I just made a little group of dangles on top of it and made this one very contemporary, like a pendulum, and very flirty, and you know, lots of movement. So here is the ingredients for this one. I'm using both of the pear drops, and this is also from that ear wire assortment. And on this one, the loop is, you can't open the loop, and it's parallel to your beading mat. So you have to create whatever you're going to do going in the loop perpendicular. And so let me show you the sample, because on this little bar that I've made, I need one simple loop, the first one going parallel to my mat and the top one going perpendicular. And that's because I put a large copper jump ring through my pear drop. So let me start connecting, and then I'll show you. It's essentially the same technique as the other one. So again, you do have to kind of open your jump rings pretty wide for this. And also, if you're newer to jewelry, you don't want to ever try to pull your jump rings apart that way. You twist them, and that way you're not taking away the round shape, but you can give yourself that space that you need. And then again, you're just going to gently like wiggle it through so you're not putting any stress on your bead. And then you twist it back in the opposite direction until the metal, you know, it's metal to metal. And you know, like if you were to try to take this jump ring and pull it that way, first of all, I don't know if you need a lot of strength for that, but trying to push it back together is also nearly impossible. But when you do this twisting motion, you can rock it back and forth and literally get a perfect circle again. So that's the start of this. And then because of the 2 earrings, obviously that I needed 2 earrings, I started with 2 pieces of 20 gauge wire that I cut them the exact same length. It's about 1.5 inches. You could make it longer if you wanted a longer pendulum, or you could make it shorter if this is a little bit too dramatic for you. But for me, I thought that was a pretty sweet size. So I'm gonna again use my 1.5 millimeter one-step looper. It's so easy to get your simple loops in with this tool without a lot of measuring, and your loops are consistent. But you see, I make them quite easily also by hand, so you could do it that way too. But there's no beads on again, so it's just past the back cutter, and it makes a little fresh blunt cut. It makes my loop, and then I just pull it down, and then I need nylon jaw pliers. While it's still in the tool for me, I always take a second, especially on this wire, because this is the downward rod or drop on this earring. So when I take it away, my first loop is in there. So now to get the other one, if I hold it like this, the one-step looper is going to make the loop up. I'm going to turn it so that this loop is parallel to my mat and put it in just past the back jaw again. Let it make the cut for me, make that loop, pull it down so the loop is centered on the wire, and then while it's in the tool, if you want to align anything, you can. And so that is such an easy way to get a component where your loops are going in the opposite direction. And so I can go ahead and, you know, add it to the top of my drop here. So just go ahead and pop that jump ring into the simple loop after I open it wide enough. close that simple loop and work harden it. And now from here, this loop is perpendicular and it is ready to be attached to my ear wire. So I'm going to open that, put it through my ear wire and close it. And now I'm ready to add my baubles to this design. Work harden. So that's the start. And honestly, you could be done right there. Couldn't you honestly be done right there? That's so beautiful. But we're going to add these baubles, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing with my simple loops, and I'm just going to copy the order in which I string them onto the jump ring. So my first one is, you can even line them up. My first one is a gold, then a rust, then a opaque white, then green, and then a gold. So they're all lined up, and I can sit here and, you know, quickly make my baubles and attach them to the front of the jump ring. So obviously there's a front and a back because it's connected to a front and back pair drop. Okay, they're all done, and I do have space on this jump ring. Like if I wanted, I did 5, you could do 6, 7. I like to work in odd numbers, and so connecting them that way, they hang identically, they bobble identically. So I absolutely love all 5 pairs of my earrings. Honestly, they're all earrings that I would wear. So my next project is basically already done. I wanted to do a stretch bracelet, and I wanted to like make the bold impact of just keeping all of these beautiful Czech glass hearts together. This is such a cool bead because it's both a heart and a leaf, and this one is copper washed. So I popped some gold. I just made a little pattern where there's a gold spacer bead in between the 2 bows of the hearts, and then another spacer bead with a Czech glass round where the tip of the heart is. And if you are new to making stretch bracelets, a tip is that for tying the knot, I kept my pattern going, but for where you're going to tie your knot, string it so that that bead has a large enough hole. Bella cat, what do you need? I have the most talkative cat. Sorry guys, but so that the bead where your knot will go, there's a large enough hole that you can pull your knot inside. There are several ways to tie stretch cord. I do not overthink it. I always use my GS Hypo Cement. I have pre-stretched my cord, and I'm going to come to this side and do a knot that is right over left. And then I'm right hand dominant, so I'm going to turn my work and just pull it tight. I'm going to turn my work this way so that now I'm tying in the opposite direction. And I want to get a few knots in there. I don't want to get it so big that I can't hide it inside my beads, so that's about right. And the other thing that I do with stretch bracelets, it's not forever jewelry. They are meant to last a few seasons. And so what I'll do is generally make them a tiny bit bigger than what I actually need, because then as you take them on and off, you're not like stretching them so much. But I got this one perfect. It's such a pretty pattern. And you know, when the stretch cord is not functioning and is not what you want it anymore, you would certainly don't toss this. Just snip it and take all your beads back and do a new design. You know, that's the nature of it. So I always use my GS Hypo Cement on my knot before I pull it in my bead. So I'm just going to separate my beads a little bit. I have pre-stretched my cord. That helps a lot to make your piece last. And then I'm just going to get some glue on that knot. And then I'm just going to kind of pull that last bead, pull that knot inside that last bead. You know, if you can. And I'm just going to trim my stretch cord, not too close, but like for me, that's a bracelet that I will just wear all the time. I am not even going to put a charm on that, and I have enough here for another stretch bracelet. And then the last piece that I'm going to do in today's video is going to have this gorgeous little owl bead, and it is also going to have a birdie charm. I have my jump ring out here, and in the box was this beautiful toggle, and I just think, again, this is like jewelry poetry because the T-bar of the toggle is a little feather, so it's perfect for the owl and the little bird. And then I love this gemstone strand, and I separated up the Fireside Czech glass fire polish round. I just separated the more brown and kind of amber beads because I just love the way they look with the owl's little feet and his little nose. I thought it was just perfect. So I'm going to cut this open, and this is going to be a strung and crimped bracelet. So gosh, I'm doing a little bit of everything today. Just take these all off the strand. It's always, I always seem to do better designing and organizing my patterns when I cut all the beads open. And I'm going to be stringing on my Garnet Color Soft Flex 49 strand bead stringing wire. It's my favorite. So I have a bracelet length here. I'm also going to be using some number 2 crimp tubes. And a lot of times when I work with my soft flex wire, when I make the loop for my closure, I just let the wire be exposed. But this bead mix is so gorgeous. And I just love this little pop of color. So I'm going to create my loop with this bead mix, and then, you know, my bracelet will coordinate with like my earrings and things that I've made. So to start off with, I'm going to take one of my number 2 crimp tubes and feed it on, and then I'm just going to count seed beads here. Probably I did 12 there. Probably, let me start with 10. So I'm just going to feed that wire back down through my crimp tube and just check my loop. I don't need a huge loop. It really just has to house a jump ring for my closure. I think I'm going to do 12. I want to see a little bit more color on my loop, so I'm just going to pop on 2 more. Yeah, isn't it amazing how like the loop is just prettier with just 2 more seed beads? So I'm going to use my magical crimping plier, and I'm going to be very careful not to crush my seed beads. And before I close down, I just want to really take my time and make sure that my crimp tube is centered in the divot, and I just felt it go in. I'm also like pulling everything so that it's nice and tight, and when I close the tool, I have just made a square with 4 pinched corners. Now I'm going to fit it in the opposite direction, again being really careful not to crush my seed beads. When you use this tool around seed beads, that's a danger. And when I feel it's in the center, close in that direction. And now just hold that spot, open and close, and go around a few times. That's probably overkill, but you can kind of feel when you still have forming to do, and you can take it out and peek like that looks pretty good. But if you feel like it could use a little bit more shaping, you can fit it back in to its spot and go around a few times. And that number 2 crimp tube looks the same size as an 11/0 seed bead, so I really like that. And now I just want to create a pattern here. I'm going to bring in some, I don't want to lose that little crimp tube. I'm going to bring in some copper rondelles, the same ones that I used over here. And I also have this little spacer mix, which I love. So I'm going to want maybe these or maybe these. I didn't work out this pattern ahead of time at all. So these are my 8/0 craft store gold seed beads. I like those. It's always nice when your cut end of wire can fit back through a couple of beads. So I love that. And I think I'm going to maybe a copper and then a gemstone. That's gorgeous. Okay, I have tried several things because of the way the owl is sitting on the stringing. You know, ceramic beads have such a large hole, and I didn't want to see all of that on the bottom of him. I wanted him to have kind of a perch, so I have these large wavy disc spacers in my stash, and I also have the little 6mm ones, so because I wanted it to be cohesive. And also, as you notice, I'm doing my owl bead about 1/3 of the length of my bracelet. So 1/3 the owl, 2/3, because I'm probably going to put my charm down here with the toggle, and the toggle and the charm are just so pretty. That's probably going to be like the top part of the bracelet. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I'm going to continue with that stringing pattern that I have here. Which I would be resuming with one of these amber beads, and I'm just going to continue alternating the Czech glass fire polish with the gemstone beads and spacing them out with these seed beads. Okay, all my stringing is done. I think it's really sweet. I love this little owl, and I'm going to pop on the number 2 crimp tube and count another 12 seed beads. And go back down through my crimp tube the same way that I did on the other side, and a few beads if I can. Don't know if it will go through the Czech glass fire polish, but those first 2. And then I don't want to crimp in a straight line. I want to pull my loop, pull everything tight, but I'm going to lay my bracelet out here, and if I need to loosen it a little bit before I crimp, I can. That is lovely. And same thing, being careful not to crush my seed beads. Make my little square, opposite direction. And snip. And now I am ready. Let me clean up a little bit and we'll attach our final little things. Okay, I have some jump rings here, and I am going to start off with a single. And let's see, what am I going to do? Yeah, a single jump ring for the round part of my toggle. And I have some two really small copper jump rings here for the T-bar, because it's a little bit easier when you have extra jump rings to fit a T-bar. So ring through my seed bead loop, round part of my toggle. That is so cute. That is the prettiest bracelet. Okay, I just have to figure out where I am going to add my little charm. Do I want to go right beneath my owl, right there? I think I'm going to go where the toggle is with this little charm. So I'm going to put my charm on, and then instead of putting my jump ring through the loop, I am going to get that jump ring around the circumference of my bracelet and lay it down on my mat and get this closed really well. And then I'll show you what that does. It's just a little connecting trick. So my charm is never going to be kinked or stuck. It goes around 360 degrees. So whether the bracelet it goes on this way or this way, that little charm just flows really beautifully around the bracelet. So you guys, what an amazing Sam's bead box. I mean, it always is. It really is. It really focuses on Czech glass and gemstones in this box, but they also have the most beautiful, usually made in Greece findings, metal findings, and it's so beautifully curated and put together. As you can see, my sorry, my earrings are just completely out of film, out of the camera frame. My you know, creativity just flows when a box is this good. And I feel like all my projects are just delicious. There's some poetry in jewelry here with the birds and the owls and just the color story. It's just absolutely lovely. So I'll definitely put up some better pictures at the end. And I have a discount code for signing up for Sam's Bead Box that you know, signing up to receive it monthly. Also, there are links for past bead boxes, and I have a special deal coming up for you guys if you do not want to get a monthly box, but you would love to have a Sam's Bead Box to create with. They have a special deal coming up. I'm going to share that as soon as the videos are ready. And I thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up and or a hype, and I will see you in the next video.